Let me adjust my light a little bit. So for today's story time, I decided to tell you guys about my 16-hour labor and delivery. I want to start off by saying that it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I had this whole story, like a story scheme in my head about how my labor was gonna go and all that stuff, but it wasn't as bad, to be really honest. But I think I was just freaking myself out because I would ask people about their experiences and how they were dealing and coping with pain and stuff. But everybody had like different stories, and their experiences were all different. So just because someone had a good experience doesn't mean that I was gonna have one too. My little sister had a very okay experience with her kids, like with her daughter. She had an epidural, and both of her kids were born super fast, like maybe 3 hours into arriving at the hospital. And then with her son, she had no epidural, but that's because they delayed it, and by the time they brought it in, her son was already out. But she had him without an epidural. He was born like 3 hours after she arrived at the hospital, as well as her daughter. So I, just like everybody else, I was like, I want to go natural, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'm gonna hold it and I'm gonna see how far I can get into labor and not ask for pain medication. But I mean, that's everybody's goal. But honestly, if you've had your kids without an epidural, then I mean, you're really strong-minded and you're very, very disciplined, because you do need to be very disciplined to deal with that kind of pain. I remember this one day, I think I was like maybe 33 weeks. I started to feel like cramping, and it felt like a period pain, but a little more intense. And I couldn't differentiate between Braxton Hicks or contractions, because I've never had neither. So come on, baby. So I was like, what is this? Like, it can't be period pain because obviously I'm pregnant. But are they Braxton Hicks? Like, or am I going into labor? What is this? So they were kind of intense. And I remember that day I had got an iced coffee. And you guys don't know, I love iced coffee. But that day, because of the pain, I wasn't drinking it. So, I mean, it was serious. We're on our way home from grocery shopping, and it was sudden. I started to feel pain very suddenly, and it went from being very mild to very strong very fast. And it was like minutes apart that I was feeling the pain. But the way I knew it was Braxton Hicks is because a day later, they went away. So this just lasted a few hours. So anyway, we get home and the pain goes away. But I was freaking out because I was, like I said, 33 weeks, and I thought that she was gonna be born premature, because I mean, that's not even considered full term. I think full term is around 37 or 38 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. But I was scared. But I mean, I didn't go to the hospital because the pain went away. 5 weeks after that, I was 38 weeks, and I remember I had an appointment, my 38-week checkup, and I didn't go to it. So my appointment with that doctor was scheduled for way later on. And because I was already towards the end of my pregnancy, I couldn't really wait. So I had to be scheduled for another appointment with another doctor. And because I had gestational diabetes, it was also very important for me to see my doctor on every appointment. So I go to this appointment, and he's asking me for the log of my my sugar levels and stuff, because you gotta, I guess, keep track of it every single day, prick your finger 4 times. But I didn't have it, and he asked for it, and I'm like, well, I don't have it yet. And he's like, you haven't been checking your levels? And I'm like, no. So he's like, how come? And I told him, well, I was gonna get my equipment today, not today, but on my other appointment, but I missed it. So they scheduled it for a later time, and I haven't got my stuff. And he was pretty mad. So he's like, well, it's a little late in the game now. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know what to say. That same day, he's like, well, since you haven't been checking your levels, we're gonna check them right now, and after this, you're gonna have to be sent to the hospital, because we're gonna have to monitor her heart rate. So that's what you guys see on the other vlogs. And they sent me to the hospital. I arrived, and yeah, they kept me there for about an hour. And the first time that I went to have her heart monitored, I'm not gonna lie, like I walked into the hospital, I was super scared because I was like, if any day now, like I can go into labor. And yeah, my doctor was like, well, you are 38 weeks in a couple of days, so you can pretty much go into labor any day. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is scary, like I don't know what to expect. So I walked into the hospital, they checked me in and all of that stuff, and I was really nervous when I was in that room, and it was really cold. Hospitals are really cold. So I get there, they do what they gotta do, and then I leave an hour later, and then they schedule me for another one, for another appointment, because they had to do this twice a week. So they schedule me for another appointment on the, I think it was on a Thursday. So that day comes, and I go again, I check in, they check me in, they check my levels, they monitor her heart, and they stay there for about 3 hours this time. And the first time they did an ultrasound, they didn't need one this time, but I mean everything was good. They scheduled me again for another appointment on Monday, and then I remember before I left the hospital that day, the nurse asked if I had been spoken of, I mean if I've been talked to about induction, and I was like no. So she's like, okay, well, because you have gestational diabetes, your doctor might speak to you about induction on your next visit. And I was like, okay, well, I have a visit on Monday, so maybe he'll tell me something about that, because I haven't felt anything, like no signs of labor other than, mild contractions here and there. So she's like, okay. So I go home, and that day on Monday, I remember we had 3 appointments. So he had an appointment at that same day, it was 3. So he had his appointment at 9, I had one at 2, and then my doctor's appointment at 5. So the one at 2 was a hospital one. So I go to the hospital, I'm there, they keep me in for 3 hours, and then I'm like a little nervous because my next appointment was with my OBGYN at 5:15, but I was already in the hospital for 3 hours, and I was already like, it was like 4:50. So while I'm there, I get a phone call, and it's the clinic, and they're like, okay, we're gonna have your appointment rescheduled because your doctor is on call, and he was calling to the hospital for to deliver a baby. So I was like, okay. So they scheduled me for another appointment, and the appointment that they gave me was past my due date. So they gave me an appointment for August 26th. So the nurse walks in the hospital. She walks in and she tells me that I'm ready to go home, and I'm like, okay. And I told her, she asked, when's your next visit with your doctor? So I told her it was today, but they had it canceled, and they scheduled me for the 26th of August, but I'm due on the 22nd. And she's like, okay, well, let me speak to him, let me talk to him, and then I'll let you know what he wants to do. So he was at the hospital, and they spoke, and she comes in, and she's like, he's saying that I guess he got a little bit upset with the clinic because I had to be seen, I guess, immediately, especially because it was like the last weeks of my pregnancy, and I had gestational diabetes. So he was like, no, like she needs to call, and they need to arrange something because she needs to be seen like tomorrow or the following day, because she's already, her due date's around the corner. My due date was a week away. So I was like, okay, well, what's gonna happen? I'm like freaking out, right? Because I don't have an appointment, and then I'm already due like in 6 days, and like all these things, I'm like, I don't know what to expect and everything. So I go home, and I don't think I mentioned this, it was on a Monday. So on Tuesday, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna call the hospital, I'm sorry, the clinic. I'm gonna call the clinic and make an appointment, let them know what my doctor said. So that day on Tuesday, I remember I started to feel pain around 2 p.m. and I was already scared. Like I was concerned because since I hadn't went into labor yet, like I knew that I was probably gonna have to get induced at 39 weeks. Mind you, I was already 39 weeks in 2 days. So because of the gestational diabetes, they normally induce you. So at 39 weeks, I believe, or before 39 weeks. So I was like a little bit scared. And then that day on Tuesday, like around 2 p.m., I started to feel cramping, and it was very, very mild. And I was like, I don't think it's nothing, honestly. And then a day before, so on Monday, that same day when I went home from the hospital, I was like really, really scared and freaked out. So I was like determined to, speed up my like just get contractions and stuff and just make myself go into labor, like induce my labor naturally. We went for a walk for like a 1 hour walk. I did stairs, I ate pineapple, I did all these things that people talk about, and honestly I feel like I did make myself go into labor naturally. I also have a vlog on that. But anyway, so on Tuesday, like at 2 p.m. I started to feel pain, and I was laying down, and then I got up and I was like, why do I feel like this? It's like a weird pain. So in my head I'm thinking it's probably just like, mild contractions that I've been having already. And yeah, I mean, it stayed at that, and then they slowly, like, they would go away and they would come back, and I'm like, okay, this is very strange, it's not going away. And I mean, it's been 3 hours. I started to time the what I believe were contractions. So they started off at like 6 minutes, then it was 5, and then eventually 2 minutes, and then it would go back up to like 5 minutes, and just, in between 2 to 6 minutes. So I was like, okay, this is not normal. I think this is like, labor. So I get off bed, and I stand up, and I'm like, oh my god, I feel like the strongest pain. So that kind of confirmed what I was already thinking. And then I walk into the living room, and I tell him, like, I think this is labor. Like, I'm not sure if, I don't know how much longer I have until she's born. And he was like a little concerned, and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. But then, I mean, you guys should see in that video that we started to like pack her stuff, and just, well, we had it packed already, but we started to go through her things and make sure that everything was good. And then we got like her crib all ready, and we were just, you guys can go back and see that video. At this time it was like 5:50, I think. And then that same day he was supposed to go to school to like sign up, and because I was having pain, he was like, should I go or should I not? Do you want to go? And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't think I'm gonna give birth anytime soon. So we go to the school, and we get there, and it's about 6:40, and we talk to his teacher, whatever, we're doing our thing. And then I started to get, stronger contractions, and I'm just standing there with my eyes closed and holding my stomach. And the instructors pass by, and they see me, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just having pain. And they're like, do you need an ambulance? Like, they were really concerned. So I was like, no, I'm fine. And they're like, are you sure? Are you sure you're okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm fine. I'm on my way to the hospital now. So they watched me walk into my car, and he helped me get in, and then, we took off, whatever. So then from there, I was already feeling like stronger contractions. At this point, I knew it was like actual labor. So on our way to the hospital, I started to time them again, and they were very close together, like very, very close, and a lot stronger. So I'm like, oh my god, it hurts. Like, I don't know if I want to go to the hospital right now, because I can bear with the pain. It's not that bad. I can still deal with it without having to be at the hospital. And he's like, well, do you want to go already? And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. But we were going to stop at Walmart to get some slippers for me and some other stuff that we needed, but we didn't end up going, because on our way there, the CHP pulled us over. So we were stopped by the highway patrol, and we were kind of going a little bit fast, and he had his emergency lights on. So when the officer saw us, he like immediately pulled us over, and he had his sirens on. So he had us pulled over, and he gets off, and I don't know if I think I added that clip to my vlog. I think I have it on my labor and delivery vlog. So he pulls us over, and he's like talking to us, and he thinks we have weed in the car. I don't know why he thought that. Well, I guess the smell was coming from outside, because I smelled it too. But I'm like, I don't have weed. Like, does it look like I smoke weed? But he's like, well, if you're pregnant, you're gonna have a baby, you shouldn't be smoking weed in the car. And I'm like, we're not smoking. So he's like, oh, I'm sorry, it's from out here. I thought it was in there, but no, you guys are good. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're not smoking. So anyway, he lets us go, and he asked if we wanted him to follow us to the hospital. I said yeah, so he followed us. The traffic behind us kind of like backed away a little, because he had his lights. So they let us go, and we arrived to the hospital. I get off, and I check in, and I tell the guy, like, I'm having pain. He's like, okay, well, you know, my partner, he's gonna have to wait out here until you're checked in and you're admitted. And I'm like, okay. So he's waiting in the waiting room, and they check me in and stuff, and they take me into triage, which is like a little room. She has me change into like these really ugly robes. And then she's like, okay, well, we're going to take your blood pressure. We're going to connect it to the monitor, and I'm going to check if you're dilated. And I was like, oh, yay, I've been waiting for someone to check if I'm dilating. So she's like, they've never checked in. I'm like, no, because they keep on telling me that I have to wait until 39 weeks, which I'm already 39 weeks, but the doctor didn't check me yesterday or that day, whatever. So she checks me, and she's like, oh, okay, you're about a 3 and you're 70% effaced. And I'm like, okay, good. So, you know, the pain I've been feeling, it means something, like I progressed. She's like, yeah, you're 3 centimeters. So then she tells me that she's gonna ask the doctor if he wants to keep me or what do they want to do. And she leaves for like maybe 20 minutes, and then during that time my boyfriend's still waiting for me in the waiting room. And she walks in again, and then she tells me that they are gonna keep me. So I go into the restroom when after she tells me that they're gonna keep me, and that I'm gonna be admitted. I go into the restroom and I wipe, and I was bleeding. So I was like, oh shit, like this is a real thing, like it's gonna happen today. So I'm not even nervous at this point. I was excited. I was in pain, but I was happy that I was feeling pain, because I would much rather have this happen naturally than to be induced, because I've heard that induction is really scary. I don't know personally, but I've heard it from everybody who has had it. Everybody always tells me that it hurts more and that it's super scary. So I was excited to, you know, be going into labor naturally. So yeah, they check me in and everything. The doctor walks in to talk to me and tell me that they're gonna keep me and that it's gonna happen already. Probably, he said it was gonna happen probably tomorrow, which was Wednesday. And I'm like, okay. And then he asked about epidural. I'm like, I don't know, like I really want to just deal with the pain, like just deal with it and see how far I can get, and if I need it, then I'll just take it. And like I said, we all think that we're gonna be able to do it. Some of us can, but there's others who, you know, we just can't. I tell him my plans, and I tell him what I want to do, and he's like, okay, great, well, if you need it, just let us know and we'll be here. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, the nurse walks back in, and then she takes me into the room where I'm gonna give birth, so into the labor and delivery room, or whatever they call that little section. And when I walked in there, like I felt this happiness in my heart, because I saw like the incubator thing where they wait the babies and all these things, and then I saw my bed, and then the monitoring and all of these things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm not leaving this hospital without my baby. So I was really excited. And I was feeling pain. It wasn't bad, to be really honest. If you ask me right now, I cannot remember the pain from 1 centimeter to like 5 or 6. I can't remember. So I walk in there. I'm in my robe, whatever that ugly robe they give you in the hospital, and they do all these things that they gotta do. They connect me to the monitor. They put in my IV. I'm in there just, you know, relaxing and stuff. I use the restroom. I walk out, and I'm like feeling more pain. And then they ask again about epidural, so I kept declining the epidural. And then finally I asked the nurse, I'm like, are you guys gonna let my partner in? Like, when is he gonna be able to be in here with me? And she's like, oh, well, he needs to get tested for COVID, and then if he's clear, then he can come in here. And I'm like, okay. So they test us both, and to be really honest, I think that I've been tested about 3 times, but it hurt so bad this time at the hospital. Like, she did it for like a good 10 seconds, and I'm like, you know, like sneezing, and my stomach hurts and everything together. They're putting in the IV at the same time. So we were both negative. They finally let him in. He brings all of our stuff, and he's there with me. And then all this time that I was in the room, I'm like standing and just like trying to bear with the pain. I'm looking at the monitor and just watching the contractions as they go up and then as they come down. And I'm feeling like this pain, and he's like, you should lay down. And I'm like, I don't want to, because if I lay down, like it hurts more. So anyway, like my legs started to get tired, and I'm like, fuck, like what am I gonna do? Like, I'm tired, but I don't want to lay down, because if I lay down, they're worse. So I'm not gonna be able to bear the pain. So finally I give in, and I just lay down. And yeah, they were kind of strong, but I was trying to find like a good comfortable position to be in, because it was gonna be like a very long night. So I got comfortable and stuff. I'm still feeling pain, but it wasn't that bad. So then the nurse walks in again and she checks me and she's like, okay, you're about, I think when she checked me, I was about a 5. I was about a 5, maybe. This was like at 3 a.m., I think, that she checked me. And then she's like, so are we still not gonna get epidural? And I'm like, no, not yet. And then she's like, okay, well, the anesthesiologist called in and he's asking if you're gonna want it because he's gonna go to sleep. He's been working for 3 days straight. Well, not 3 days, 24 hours straight, and he wants to know if you want to take the epidural now or if you want to wait because he's gonna sleep and he doesn't want to be woken up. And I'm like, okay, well, no, I don't want it. So he walks in and he tells me the same thing, and I'm like just staring at him, and I have pain, and like I'm like irritated at this point, and he's telling me like, if you don't want it, that's fine, but are you sure? Because I don't want you to wake me up later on, and I hate to be disturbed. I'm fresh right now. If you want to take it, I can put it in, and it's gonna be good. And I'm like, I don't want it. Like, I'll be fine. I'll call you in the morning if I want it. You can go to sleep. I promise I won't wake you up. Like, I really won't. So he's like looking at me like, are you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure. You can go out, deal with the pain. I'm gonna be fine. So he leaves and takes his nap or whatever. And then like around 6 a.m. the doctor comes back in and she checks me, and at this time they're rotating nurses, so this shift ends and then another shift walks in. And obviously the doctor who was going to deliver babies that night goes home, and then there's new doctors on the floor. So luckily I wanted my OBGYN to deliver my baby, since I had been seeing her for like my entire pregnancy since the beginning, and I wanted her to deliver my baby. Lucky for me, she was on call that day, so she was in the hospital and she was going to be delivering babies that day. So it was already Wednesday because 6 a.m. whatever. The next day it was already Wednesday. I remember like at 6, before the nurse left home, she walks in and she checks me and she says I'm a 6. I was at 6 centimeters, and I was like, oh my god. Like at this point I was feeling very intense contractions. So I'm in the restroom and I'm like sitting down, like you guys could see on my vlog. I'm like sitting down and just holding on to I don't know what. Throughout the night there was no way, like no position that would help me with the pain, but being in the restroom, like sitting down in that position, it was helping me for some reason. So I liked to be in there because I wasn't feeling the pain as intense. But at 6 centimeters, I remember I was in there and I was sitting down and I just couldn't handle the pain very well. And my doctor walks in, my OBGYN, and I didn't know it was her, but she walks in and I hear her voice, and immediately I'm like, oh my god, yes, like she's gonna deliver my baby. So she walks in. Actually no, I think that they had already told me that she was gonna be in, but anyway, she walks in and she says hi to my boyfriend. And then she walks into the restroom and she's like, how are we doing? And I'm like, oh, like in pain. I'm like holding my stomach. And she's like, how far along are you? And I'm like, I'm like a 6. And she's like, oh, great. That's the perfect number for an epidural. And I'm like, oh, she kind of convinced me. I'm not gonna lie. She kind of convinced me to get it because they told me that they still had to break my water because my water hadn't broken yet. At this point, I was a little bit scared because they were gonna have to break my water, or because they hadn't broken yet, and they told me like, once we break your water, it's gonna be very, very intense. I was like, oh my goodness, so then I should just get the epidural because I'm 6 centimeters. It's really bad right now, and if they break my water, it's gonna be worse. Like I was like, oh my god, like I still need to get to 10 centimeters and then push her out and all these other things. And I'm like, I might as well just get it. So I asked her. I told her like, I'm just gonna get it because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this pain right now. Like I just wanted to go by. Like I want to get it over with. So I was complaining about the pain at this point. I wasn't complaining then, but then once I got to 6 centimeters, I was starting to complain about the pain because it was really bad. And it was really close together as well, so it was not fun. So I'm sitting there in the toilet, and then I'm talking to her, and then finally I get up. TMI, by the way. I get up, and then I'm like, I see it was what I believe was my mucus plug. It was like really gross, but it was my mucus plug. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, things are gonna escalate pretty fast after this, I think. So I get up, I walk back to my bed, I lie down, and then I'm complaining about the pain. I'm like turning, tossing and turning, and I'm like, oh, I can't, like it hurts so bad. And he's massaging my back. He's doing what he can to like help me. So then the anesthesiologist walks in, and he's like, wow, so you really didn't wake me up. You were serious when you said that I could sleep and that you wouldn't bother me. And I'm like, I told you. And I'm like, I'm holding on to the rail, and he's talking to me, and I'm like holding on to the rail, and I'm like, I told you. And I'm like out of breath, and I'm like, yeah, did you get some sleep? And he's like, yeah, I got some sleep. Thank you for asking. And he's like, so are you ready for the epidural? And I'm like, yes, but he took a while to get there. He took about 30 minutes after I had asked for it. And I was like getting a little bit nervous because I thought that the same thing that happened to my sister was going to happen to me. Because she asked for the epidural, but they took forever to bring it. So she delivered her baby like before the epidural got there. So I thought that was going to happen, and I was really scared. But he brought it in, and then he had like another nurse with him. And I think she was like training because he was explaining the process to her while I was in pain. So they had me like stand up, and at this point I had another nurse, so it was like the morning shift. And she was, I mean, I guess my other nurse was a little bit nice. She was nice too, but this other nurse was a little bit more like harsh. Not harsh, she was a little more like, I don't know what the word is, but she wasn't as nice as as careful, I think, as my other nurse. So they have me sit on the bed, and they asked me to move all the way to the edge so my back can be really arched and he can get to where he had to, be. So I move, and I'm like feeling all these contractions, and I'm sitting, and then they have me like bent my back, like I'm like, arching my back as much as I can. And then this other nurse is holding my hands, and then the anesthesiologist is behind me with this other nurse, and my boyfriend's in there. They had him sit down because I guess he can, I don't know, guys faint when they see all these things. But they had him sit down, and he started to do his thing, and then he walked me through the process. He asked me a few questions. He told me what can go wrong and what I would feel, and then just, side effects after the epidural, and, later on in the years, whatever. So he's doing all these things, and he's like, okay, so you're gonna feel a little pinch. That was not a little pinch. Like, it felt so like a sting. Like, I've never felt this sting before, but it was a sting. It was not a pinch, and it stung very bad. So he did his thing. He did all that. Put in the catheter, I think that's what it's called, and I could feel it all, and it was like very uncomfortable pain. And at the same time, I was getting contractions, and I was like, oh, like I was complaining about it really bad. And you can also see that on my vlog. I'm not sure if you can hear me complain, but you do see the part where he's doing, the epidural. Once he put the epidural in, he's like, okay, so let's wait for a contraction. And I'm not sure why, but they're waiting for a contraction. I got another contraction, and he asked the nurse about my blood pressure. I guess it drops with an epidural. Everything was good, so they lied me down, and I was like not feeling much pain. But that was only on my right side. My right side was completely, it was numb. I wasn't feeling nothing. But then on my left side, I was feeling pain, but I was like, okay, my feet are tingling, and I think that it's the epidural's kicking in. So I didn't really say nothing. And then once I started to feel like super, super strong pain, like it was horrible. I don't understand. Like, I was numb, but then at the same time I was feeling like all this, extra pain. So the nurse, like everybody left at this point. I was left alone in the room with my boyfriend, and then they leave, and then 15 minutes later they come in, and I tell her like I'm feeling a lot of pain. Like, I don't think that the epidural, numbed me at all, because I could feel it all. And then she asked me where, and I told her. So then she turns me to the other side, like carelessly. She just turned me, and it hurt really bad. That hurt really bad too. So she did that, and then she's like, okay, just keep it this way, and then we'll see if you feel any numbness, and then if you still feel pain, I'm gonna come back and check you and see if you want to do the epidural again. So she walks in another 5 minutes later, and I'm like, oh my god, please can you check me? Like, it hurts really bad, and I don't know, like, if this is normal. Like, epidurals are supposed to numb you, but maybe like not all the way. So she said that you do need to feel some kind of pressure, but not pain. And I was like, no, I'm feeling pain. Like, this is not normal. So I'm complaining, and I told my boyfriend, like, please, like, I never used that little phone, the phone thing that they gave you to call, but I used it twice, that day because, well, at that time, because I was already like very, very uncomfortable and it was super horrible pain. And then my body was pushing on its own. So then she's like, okay, well, let me check you. So she goes and she checks me, and she's like, okay, you are already 10 centimeters. And I was like, that quick? Like in 20 minutes? I went from 6 to 10, like in 20 minutes. She's like, yeah, I think that the epidural kind of relaxed your body, and then you dilated to 10 centimeters, so you're pretty much ready to start pushing. Actually, no, she told me that I wasn't ready to push, but I was already ready to, like, start the process of pushing. So she calls my doctor. My doctor walks in, and then she's like, how are we doing? Like, all not dramatic, like all exaggerated, and like being very like playful in a way. I don't know what the word is, but like doctors, I don't know why you guys do that. If people are in pain, why are you asking how are we doing? But she walks in and she's asking like these questions, and I'm like, I'm not doing good, and I'm breathing like I'm out of breath, and I'm like and I'm feeling contractions, and then I feel them coming, and then my boyfriend's telling me like, okay, there's another one, and I'm like, I know I could feel them before you notice, you see them on the screen. So they kind of coach him on how to help me relieve the pain, but it was not helping. Nothing was helping me. I was trying to be like very strong-minded, but it was really tough. So they were there watching me be in pain, and then my doctor's like, it's okay, honey, like you need to breathe through them. You can watch that on my vlog as well, my labor and delivery vlogs. I'm not sure, I think it was the second one already. So my part 2 of my labor and delivery, you can hear her like telling me to breathe through them and stuff, and I'm like, I'm trying, but I can't. It's so tough. Like, it's easier said than done. So I'm like trying to breathe through them and just let them go, but it was so tough. And she's like, rest in between. I had like maybe 15 seconds in between each contraction, and she's telling me to like relax and breathe and just relax in between them. So I was trying, and I'm pushing, and like my body naturally wanted to push. So then she's like, okay, if anything else happens, like you're already 10 centimeters, but if you feel anything else, like you feel baby coming or anything, you call us in. And I'm like, okay. So they leave, and I'm scared because they're leaving, and I'm like, I need you here because I think that she's gonna come out already. So they take off, they go to wherever they went, I'm not sure, but they leave, and I'm there with my boyfriend. I'm like, oh my god, like my body, I'm not sure if you can hear it in the vlog, but my body is pushing on its own. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt that urge to push and your body just pushes on its own. Like, that's what I was feeling. I told him, like, please call, please tell him, like, I feel her, like I feel her head, it's like coming, and I'm like, I'm pushing and I'm trying to control it. So then they walk in and they look at me and they're like, are you ready to push? And I'm like, oh, like, I'm making that noise, like my body's pushing on its own. And they're like, no, honey, like, don't push. You're gonna, what did she tell me? She said, if you push, you're gonna make your cervix swell or something. And she's like, and baby won't be able to come out. And I'm like, oh my god, like, I'm gonna die. Like, this is not happening to me right now. So she's like, okay, let me check you again and let me see what position the baby's in and see if you can start pushing. So she checks me, and then you can also hear that on my vlog. She's like, okay. She's like, and my dear, you are complete. And then you can hear my nurse. She's like, yay, like all excited. And she's like, okay, the baby's in, I don't know what position, LO something. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but like, if it's good, like, let's get this started. So she's like, okay, well, you're not, the baby's at -2. I don't know, I guess that means that, like, where the baby comes out, or they explained it to me in a way that the baby's still a little bit high up my, so she kind of had to come down a little to be ready to like start pushing and, deliver baby. So my body again was pushing on its own, and then, eventually the baby came down, and the doctor was like, okay, if you need to push, this is what we'll do. Like, you will push as you desire. If you feel like you need to push, just push, and we'll go from there. And I was like, okay. So she walks out, and then my nurse again checks me, but this time, because my water hadn't broken yet, but I was already 10 centimeters. So she checks me again, and I'm like, she asked me, has your water broken? And I'm like, I didn't even remember that. She's like, let me check you. So she has me laid down like completely flat. Obviously my legs are open, and then she's like, okay, let's wait for a contraction. And her hand is in there, and we're waiting for a contraction. I get a contraction, and if you've had a baby, you know that laying on your back flat hurts when you have a contraction like 3 times worse. Like it hurts so intensely. So I'm laying there flat. I'm getting a contraction. I'm like, she's like, okay, there's a contraction. And I'm already feeling it before she tells me. So I'm holding onto the rail of the bed, and then my boyfriend's looking at me, and I'm like, I look at him, and I'm like, oh, like I couldn't help it, and I start yelling out of pain, not yelling, but like, kind of moaning in pain. And then she's checking me, and they're like completely pushing her hand in there, like shoving it in there and checking the baby's head. And then she's like, okay, I think we're ready to push. And it was like, that was really, really intense. I have heard many people tell me that was gonna happen, where they were gonna check you were gonna get contractions and stuff, and it did. It happened to me, and it hurt so bad. So while she was checking me, my water broke, and it felt really weird, like this like gush of water, like a waterfall, like it was like a balloon deflated inside of me. It was weird. So it broke. My water broke when she did that, and then I guess now I was ready to start pushing. So then they called in my nurse, and then there was like, before I knew the room was filled with nurses and people. And then I didn't mention this before, but at around like 4 a.m. when I was like 5 or 6 centimeters, some nurse walks in with all the tools that they were gonna need to like help me deliver the baby. And I was so scared because my boyfriend's over there recording like all these things and knives and a bunch of stuff that they had on this little table thing, middle table. And I also have that on the vlog. So he's out there recording these things, and as I'm watching it, I'm like, damn, like, they really use these things on me. But yeah, they brought that in. So that thing's there, and then before I know it, there's a bunch of nurses just surrounding me, and then just kind of hyping me up to push. So I'm there with my legs open. They pulled me down to a little bit more to like the edge of the bed, so that the baby can come out. And I'm pushing. I think it took me a good 25 minutes to pushing to get her out. And between contractions, the contractions weren't even hurting at this point. I think that they had already upped my epidural, but I was still not fully numb, but I wasn't feeling all the pain. So I was a lot number now, and I was feeling just a little bit of the contraction. So I knew when to push, and I can feel myself pushing. I knew when to push and how to push. So I'm pushing and pushing, and then I can feel her, like it was the worst, one of the worst pains. Like I could feel her like in between like my rectum and then through where she had to come out. And like it felt like the sensation of pooping. And I even told them, like, I feel like I'm gonna poop, and they're like, that's okay if you poop. And I'm not even sure if I did. I think I did, I'm not sure. But they're like, that's okay if you have to. Like it felt like that, but it also felt like another kind of pain that was together with wanting to poop and hurting, and just something big coming out of the other part of your if you had a baby, you know what I mean. So that was going on. I was feeling that. And then my doctor was like, okay honey, there's another contraction, push again. So I'm pushing. They had me pushing 3 times, 3 times in every contraction. And then finally the last contraction, I was like, oh my god. And then I was out of breath at this point, but it was the last time that I had to push, because she was gonna come out. So I push, and then nothing. So then I push again, and I'm feeling like it's the stretching and then burning. I guess that was like the ring of fire. So I feel that too. And then they're like, oh, she has a lot of hair, look at her hair, mama. And they wanted me to see like how it looked down there, but I really couldn't, because the reflection, it was like kind of like a mirrorish thing that they had for me, but I couldn't really see much. So they're like, oh, she has a lot of hair. Hold on. In my head I'm like, how does she have a lot of hair if I didn't really get heartburn? And if you're Mexican, you know that people tell you that if you get a lot of heartburn, your baby's gonna have a lot of hair. Well, she had a lot of hair, but I never got heartburn until like the last week of my pregnancy, and I don't think that's when her hair was growing. But yeah, they told me she has a lot of hair, and I was like, oh my god. So they can see her hair, she's almost out. And I was like excited. So they're like, okay, one more push, give us one more push. And then you can hear my doctor telling me, like, now, like, push now. So I pushed her, and I held that push for like a very, very long time. Like I held it so long that my veins were popping out, and I was red, and I wasn't breathing. So that one push, I felt burning, cutting, pain, stretching, and then I can feel the doctor's fingers opening, you know, where the baby was coming out of, and then her head too. So all of that combined together, I felt it, plus the urge to poop and push. All of that together, I felt it. And then I'm like, I swear, and it felt really bad. Like, it was really, really, really bad pain. So I was like, I swear, if she's not out with this freaking push, like, I think I'm gonna die, because this is hurting me really bad. So when I pushed her and I felt all of that pain, she's like, oh, she's out, she's out. Like, everybody tells me, like, she's out, like, look at her, like, down here. And then I hear my baby crying, and I look at her, and it's like this big baby. She was 8 pounds. So I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, thank God, like, she's here, like, she's finally here, and I gave birth, like, it's all over with. I didn't feel no more pain. I just need to recover. So I was like so excited to have her and to finally have given birth, and went through everything. And like I said, it wasn't what people told me it was going to be like. It was completely different. Like, a lot of stuff that people told me I was going to go through my pregnancy and labor and delivery, it was not what they told me it would be like. Like, I think my experience was pretty it was pretty good, like, positive. And although it hurt, obviously no pregnancy is easy, but I do feel like my pregnancy was relatively easy compared to others. And if I can rate it from like 1 being the worst, 1 being the best and 10 being the worst, I would rate it like a 2, because it was not that bad. My pregnancy wasn't that bad. And I'll make a video on how you know, just a few things here and there that I wish I knew before giving birth and through my pregnancy. So just a few details. But anyway, so they get my baby, and then they put her on my chest, and they didn't take, normally they take your babies to shower them and do all these things to them, because, you know, that's what they do to babies as soon as they're born. But because I had gestational diabetes, they had her with me. They let me keep her for 24 hours, but in those 24 hours they had to prick her finger, or her ankle, I believe it was her ankle. They had to prick her ankle every 3 hours, just to make sure that her sugar levels were okay, because I guess when you have gestational diabetes, sometimes they can't keep their sugar levels like normal. So they were monitoring her, and she was good, everything was good. We kept her for the good 24 hours. After her last test, they took her in and they showered her. But yeah, she measured 8 pounds and 20 inches, and she was a big baby to me. She was a big baby. We were really excited after she was born. Like, her dad would carry her like for a good 3 hours, and we gave her like skin to skin, and till this day I still give her skin to skin, like, every night, almost all day, to be honest, because we spend most of our day at home. So I do give her a lot of skin to skin. And then we, you know, I tore twice. So I'm assuming that I tore upward and then downward as well. So they had to cut me, and then the baby cut me too. So it was 2 tears. They had to stitch me up, and then when she was stitching me up, I could feel her stitching me up. So then I told her, like, I'm feeling pain, like, what is that pain? And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, like, we're stitching you up because you tore it twice. So I'm like, oh, I could feel it. So then they numbed me, and finally, like, it went away. The pain went away. But I did, when I pushed her out after the baby came out, I felt another gush of like water, but I'm not sure if that had to be my water, the other half of my water being broken, because I felt like this gush of water, and it was the weirdest feeling as well. And then she took out the placenta. I don't know at what point, because I didn't feel that, but she took out the placenta and she shows it to us, and she's like, I actually have the video, but I'm not going to post that, because then, you know, I'm going to be demonetized if one day I'm like monetized. So she shows us a placenta. She's like, this is where your baby has been living for the past 9 months. Oxygen, restroom, food, everything. It's been in this bag, and she's been in here. And I'm like, that is so strange. Like, it's weird. But she showed us a placenta, and I thought my boyfriend was gonna like pass out, because he gags for just anything. He's very like, his stomach is very like sensitive to almost everything, and like textures and how things look and smell. So I was like, he's gonna pass out if he's looking at this. But no, he did good. So he cut the umbilical cord, and then, you know, Brielle was with us. I had her on my chest, and they asked me for her name, and I told her her name was Brielle, and they're like, happy birthday, Brielle. And, you know, it was so exciting. I think I was kind of out of it at this point, and I didn't mention this either, I completely forgot. But when I was at 5 centimeters, they asked me if I wanted the epidural. When I said no, they gave me some other medication, and that thing was like super strong, because I was like, like drugged in a way, like in a happy way. Like it was, I felt very, very comfortable. In fact, right now I'm like kind of craving that. It's weird, but I don't know what it was. They put it in my IV and I relaxed, like immediately I relaxed. And then she told me, you're gonna feel really relaxed. It's just gonna take the edge off of things, but you will feel pain. And I wasn't even feeling pain, honestly. That's what I'm telling you. Like I can't remember feeling any type of pain. Like right now I can't remember what the pain felt like from 1 to 5 centimeters up until 6. But they gave me this medication, whatever it was. It relaxed me really good, and I fell asleep. And I was even talking to my partner, my boyfriend, about I don't know what, and he left me. Like when they gave me that medication, he told me that he would go to McDonald's to get some breakfast, some food, and I was like, okay, you can go, whatever. So I was really relaxed. It was weird, but you know, that kind of took the edge off of things, and I did relax for a good 2 hours. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. That's how my 16-hour labor and delivery went. I got to the hospital at around 8:45, and I gave birth at 11:30. So that was about 15 hours, 15 or 16 hours of being in labor. So I know that it's a lot faster for other people and a lot worse for others. But my experience, like I said, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. So if you're pregnant now, I guess my best advice is don't watch videos. Don't ask people about their experiences. Take advice as in if you feel pain, like what you can do to relieve it. But do not ask like what it feels like. If you're a first time mom, like don't ask what it feels like. Don't ask almost nothing that has to do with the pain or like the process or what you're gonna feel or what's gonna happen, because it's different for everybody. Like your experience could be a lot better than mine, a lot worse, or the same. We don't know, but it all depends on who you are. And I personally feel like the walking that I did and all of the like the physical activities that I was doing, it wasn't much. It was just walking, but I was doing stairs at one point. But the last one and a half month of my pregnancy, I was walking a lot, so I know that helped me a lot, because my labor would have been a lot worse. I didn't need any Pitocin. I didn't need medication besides that medicine that they gave me to just take the edge off of things, but everything else just happening on its own. Super tired, look. My goodness, my love. I love her to death. But yeah, my body just naturally went into labor. It did everything on its own. And I'm really glad, because like if they had used Pitocin on me, God knows what I would have felt. But yeah, I delivered her at 39 weeks and 3 days. And I don't think I have anything else I want to say. But yeah, this is Brielle. This is who I was in the hospital for 16 hours. No, mamas, no llores. Say hi to your dog. Say hi, baby. She's huge, by the way. Today is it's September 17th. So it was a perfect day to do my story time labor and delivery, because today, a month ago, I was in the hospital giving birth to this little girl. My princess, she's 1 month old today. I love you, okay? I love you so much. You're not going to remember this now, but when you're older and you watch these videos, I want you to know that I love you so much. So she's sleeping. I'm going to put her to sleep. But yeah, that was all I wanted to say for today. That was my little story time. Not little because it's super long. But yeah, I hope that if you guys are planning to get pregnant, if you're a first time mom or have kids, I admire you, because you know, going through labor and delivery and all of these things, pregnancy is really tough, and it's a miracle, honestly. So just feel proud of yourself. And yeah, we're gonna go now because she's very tired. Say bye. Okay guys, bye.